Deep in the shadows of southern Africa, there lives a phantom born of danger and immortalized in the tales of terror, whispered in villages large and small. The short man comes in the dead of night, a creature of folklore in a land where folklore is so much more than only stories told around a campfire. Come with me as we explore the legend of the Tokoloshe.
Immortal sunshine.
Hello and welcome to the podcast shedding candlelight on cryptids, hauntings, mythology, and more. If it is weird, we are talking about it. This is your host, Leedawna, and today we are most certainly getting into some weird territory. This story covers folklore, a little bit of mythology, cryptozoology, and some real life true crime. Sadly, though, this grand slam creature is not in my newly acquired great big book of all things African mysterious, because my book is based on stories from West Africa, and the Tokoloshe comes to us from Southern Africa. The Tokoloshe is a dwarf-like water spirit whose roots run deep within Nguni mythology, specifically among the Zulu and Xhosa people of South Africa. These are Bantu-speaking communities whose oral traditions stretch back centuries long before European settlers arrived in those areas of Africa. However, the earliest recorded mentions of the Tokoloshe pop up in the 19th century when European explorers and missionaries arrived in Africa and started to write down the stories they were hearing from the locals. Stories that scholars and folklorists alike believe originated because people were looking for a way to explain death in cases where there was no obvious case for said death, which is pretty common throughout history. And I dare say, even today, we do like to tell ourselves lots of stories and for all sorts of reasons. The Bantu speaking people number today in the hundreds of millions and are located across Central, Eastern, and Southern Africa. Their ancestors originated in Western Africa and were farmers and metal workers who gradually spread east and south over 2 millennia in what historians call the Bantu expansion. This was a slow migration that settled the Bantu speaking peoples in South Africa between 300 and 500 AD. The Nguni are a southern branch of that vast Bantu speaking migration, and they still carry with them some of the old cultural practices that date back to their shared migration story. So while the Tokoloshe is not named in my newly acquired book, his essence is certainly within those pages. As for this creature of the South, the Tokoloshe has two origin stories, two reasons why it does exist. The first is linked to real life danger and a straightforward explanation of death. The second origin story is linked to darker events and steers more into the cautionary tale territory that is so very common in folklore. Brothers Grimm types of folklore where children are warned not to wander out into the forest, or they might find themselves eating candy in the oven of a witch. In terms of the Tokoloshe, as best as I can tell, origin story number one put the Tokoloshe on the folklore map. And then later, people evolved this spirit into a more menacing role and used it not only to explain the unexplainable, but as a cover for some of the most heinous crimes. So let's get into the description of this creature, and then we will break down how it came to be, The Tokoloshe is a well documented water spirit whose folklore has spread across all of southern Africa. It is believed that this small water spirit can turn himself invisible by drinking water or by swallowing a small stone or a pebble. One gulp and the spirit is gone from your view. But if you are unlucky enough to catch a glimpse of the Tokoloshe, you are likely to see a creature covered in hair like an ape or a Sasquatch. Only this little fellow is about knee high to an adult human and has stubby legs. He has a massive head, pointed ears, sharp fangs, and bulging red eyes that glow in the dark. His long, thin arms end in bony fingers. Some descriptions say this water spirit is hip high on an adult and that he can shrink at will. Others say the Tokoloshe has a hole drilled into its forehead, a lingering mark from the ceremony that created the spirits. A ceremony we will talk about when we get into the second and darker origin story. In the original Nguni areas of southern Africa, where the legend of the Tokoloshe is believed to have been birthed, the people used to live in, and in some cases still do, occupy round huts called rendezvous. Inside of these huts, people would commonly sleep on grass mats, and these grass mats were arranged around a wood fire. These mats were directly on the floor, and since carbon monoxide is heavier than air, it is believed that it would sink down to that floor level with the grass mats and poison the sleepers it found there, causing unexplained nighttime death when it continued to build up around the families as they slept. Though people could not explain the death, they did notice that anyone who elevated their mat even a tiny little bit did not have any problem waking up the next morning. This led to the tradition of placing bricks under the beds to elevate them. Over time, the mysterious occurrence of people quietly dying in their sleep was blamed on the short man, a creature who stood only hip high and came through at night to steal the souls of those who dared to sleep on the ground. In some ways, this could have also been a cautionary tale when you think about snakes and spiders and other types of creepy crawlers. You may have more of an encounter with those creepers if you sleep directly on the ground as opposed to being elevated. But primarily, it is believed that this thief in the night, life stealing version of the Tokoloshe came about because of carbon monoxide poisoning. Furthermore, stories evolved paralleling those of the old hag and others, where people wake up paralyzed and either feeling or seeing something on their chest. Modern science tells us this is psychological and it's a reaction where our brains are trying to make sense of the fact that we have stopped or are struggling to breathe. There are several reasons why one might stop breathing at night. Their bodies then having a reaction to that loss of oxygen, which wakes them up only for them to be a little confused and feeling the pressure in their chest. We are not talking about those reasons on this show, but I think it is a fairly common experience. So you have probably had that. And if you saw something while you were having that experience, I can understand why it would be extremely hard to be convinced that what happened to you was anything other than exactly what you saw, a creature on your chest. Having that feeling and seeing nothing could be one of the reasons the Tokoloshe gained the ability to turn himself invisible. There could also be a Tokoloshe and an old hag and all of the other things, and science has it completely wrong. It would not be the first time, and we do know there are things out there that we simply cannot explain. Which brings us to the Tokoloshe origin story number 2. In both rural and urban areas throughout southern Africa, the Tokoloshe is blamed for everything from a stroke of bad luck to an actual stroke. To banish these water spirits, people often call on sangomas or traditional healers that are often referred to as witch doctors. Now, some of these witch doctors are bad guys. They dabble in the dark arts. And if you have an issue with someone, a neighborly dispute, a jealous rival, envious of a sibling or a coworker, mad at your boss, pretty much any old thing, you can hire one of these evil witch doctors to create a Tokoloshe who will then go on to harass, harm, maim, and even kill the person of your choice. To summon this Tokoloshe, the Sangoma gone wrong finds a fresh corpse, pierces its eye sockets and brain with a hot iron rod to make sure the corpse cannot think for itself, and thus also creating that hole in its head that some people say they still see in the Tokoloshe. Then the witch doctor uses shrinking powder on the corpse, and boom, a Tokoloshe is born. It is then unleashed upon the enemies of the eventual person who sought out the witch doctor. So, in this version, the Tokoloshe is a shrunken, reanimated corpse that cannot think for itself. It is mindless and must do the basic things it was created to do. Zombie, anyone? Because that sure sounds like a zombie instead of an invisible water spirit. And this whole process reminds me of some voodoo rituals where people are claimed to be reanimated by practitioners. I am always struck by how similar belief structures are, be it mythology, folklore, religion. We truly are all connected. In this second origin story, the Tokoloshe is summoned by people instead of being a spirit that already exists in the world. It is a weapon of witchcraft, revenge, jealousy, greed, called upon by a vengeful person to terrorize whichever potentially innocent person they choose to target. The vengeful person names their target, and the Tokoloshe goes on to harass the person for weeks, months, or even years before the water spirit decides to finally harvest the person's soul. As payment for this dwarf spirit going out to harass a foe to death, the witch doctor, for the sake of the Tokoloshe, claims the soul of one of the vengeful person's family members. They do not get to choose which family member or when. They simply go to the witch doctor and make the deal. A family member's life sacrificed for their own jealousy or in the name of their own revenge. As these sorts of beliefs spread across southern Africa, the folklore began to weave itself into everyday life. In its most harmless state, the Tokoloshe is a prankster used to scare children into behaving. But at its most evil, the knee-high villain is said to cause illness, nightmares, misfortune, torment, and even death. The creature is said to choke people with its bony fingers and to bite off their toes. It also violates people, and yes, exactly in the way you are thinking. I have been going back and watching the old Destination Truth episodes, and one of them investigates the Tokoloshe. What I did not catch the first time around or don't remember being struck by back when I first watched that show was how adamant the survivors of physical assaults are that they were violated by the Tokoloshe, not a person. I can understand the willingness to divorce yourself from the reality of mankind, but I also wondered if the perpetrators of these types of crimes are intentionally hyping up this water spirit and turning it purposefully into the extremely dangerous scapegoat that it is today. Just food for thought because I cannot help myself. The Tokoloshe is said to feed on fear, and the whole attacking while you sleep thing gives me Freddy Krueger vibes. And I don't care how old that movie is, it is terrifying, and I refuse to watch it. None of us really believe in Freddy Krueger, though, unlike the Tokoloshe. Belief in this water spirit is so strong that it has been used as a defense for the crime of murder. In 1933, in Zululand, a young boy was out tending to his family's herd of something. I have seen this reported as cattle, goats, sheep. So the boy is out there tending to animals when he sees something under a blanket. Something he described as a small, evil shaped thing. He was certain that what he was looking at was the Tokoloshe. Panicked, the boy grabs an axe and begins to chop at the creature, a creature later revealed to be a human baby. In fact, the baby might have even been the boy's own nephew. This young animal herder was arrested, tried, and convicted. His case became legendary 60 years later when, in 1999, a film by Gavin Hood called A Reasonable Man portrayed a city lawyer defending the boy, the lawyer diving into village life and consulting with chiefs and sangomas alike, parsing out whether or not the boy's belief had been sincere enough to warrant the reasonable action of killing what the boy believed to be a water spirit. This tested a reasonable man law, and thankfully, the law won. Another case that forced the legal system to confront cultural beliefs is that of Elefasi Msomi, the axe killer. He was a Zulu man from a valley in Natal and claimed that between 1953 and 1955, a Tokoloshe sat on his shoulder, literally, and ordered him to kill people. He killed at least 15 people, men, women, and children. He murdered them in isolated spots and collected their blood in bottles, supposedly for the spirit. In court, he readily confessed to his crimes, claiming the demon commanded him, saying, quote, "Get me the blood of 15 people," end quote. In this case, the perpetrator was not claiming his victims were the Tokoloshe. He argued that the Tokoloshe made him do it. While the court heard his "the devil made me do it" defense, Elefasi was convicted in 1955 and hanged the following year at Pretoria Central Prison on February the 10th of 1956. In 1999, in Umlazi, a 56-year-old self-proclaimed healer with a criminal record for prior assaults and stabbing people was dating a woman who had a 3-month-old baby girl. One night, the baby girl was crying, as babies do, so the convict, Ronaldo, decided the baby could not possibly be human. It must be a Tokoloshe. And what was worse, because he was this traditional healer, he was the only one who could suddenly see this baby's true form. Everybody else looked and saw a baby, but he looked and saw the true identity of the Tokoloshe. Being the good healer that he was and convict, he spent the hours of 8 p.m. through 4 a.m. trying to convince the baby's mother that the child was evil. At least that is what he claimed in court as a reason for why he tortured this 3-month-old baby girl for so many hours. I am not going to tell you what he did to her, but I will tell you that the baby's post-mortem showed severe bruising, swelling, broken ribs, and a damaged liver. In the Durban High Court, the criminal monster claimed that he was an exorcist and had only been trying to get rid of the Tokoloshe. He then blamed the police for something, saying they messed up his whole situation by taking the baby to the morgue. I mean, he was a complete monster, and thankfully, that is what the judge called him, basically. In January of 2002, Judge Hugo sentenced the monster to life in prison, saying, quote, "The accused has no right to kill people just because he thinks they are not human and that he has supernatural powers." End quote. I feel like we need to get that on a t-shirt or maybe a poster. Similar defenses have appeared in other South African courts in an attempt to reduce the charges, and I think it just shows how ancient beliefs are ruined by mankind. The first rendition of the Tokoloshe is not so bad. People were dying, and they used the little man to reason out the why of it all. Later, someone started twisting the story and maybe even twisting it together with some other folklore. And eventually, the Tokoloshe was elevated to his current position of evil. In 2013, a paper printed a close up image of a grotesque face that was allegedly caught on camera. A face people in Johannesburg and even Namibia claim to recognize. They say it is the face of the Tokoloshe and that it steals their food, makes their children sick, and causes parents to divorce. As for people in Africa elevating their beds with bricks, that is still a common practice. As one anthropologist helpfully observed, this practice allows under bed storage in otherwise small quarters. Or, anthropologist, maybe the primary reason is that people want to ward off a Tokoloshe attacking them while they sleep. The extra storage is only a bonus. In a 2022 folklore study, belief in the Tokoloshe was linked to real psychological harm, citing that some people were too scared to even go to sleep. It is also said families were spending money on healers or witch doctors instead of doctors. Today, believers say the Tokoloshe is absolutely everywhere. It is no longer only in rural areas or near water. The Tokoloshe has gone city, and as urban populations grow, so does the myth of the Tokoloshe. Pastors hold Tokoloshe deliverance services, and Sangomas advertise removal services on social media because the folklore of the Tokoloshe doesn't just scare, it destroys, the myth crossing into real tragedies. To this day, people still wake up checking their feet just to make sure the water spirit didn't bite off their toes in the night, especially after tabloids run front page stories about sightings of the Tokoloshe. They print blurry photos of goblin like creatures, eyewitness accounts of hairy shadows in bedrooms, or of victims waking up with bite marks or unexplained bruises. The Tokoloshe started as an explanation for poison gas and nighttime death. It became a tool of witchcraft, a cultural boogeyman, and sometimes a deadly excuse. What do you think? Have you heard of the Tokoloshe? If you are in Southern Africa, have you ever raised your bed onto bricks? I have been trying to think back to when I was there some years ago, and I do not recall our beds being on bricks, which makes me feel violated. Someone should have told me that my life was in danger or just that my toes were. But honestly, no one warned me about anything there. I almost got trampled by wildebeest, and I thought some man was out there in the bush stalking me before finally realizing it was an ape or something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but once I realized it was an animal, I did feel a lot safer. Then the next day, there were men out with guns because they too had spotted whatever it was and said that they are aggressive and will basically rip off your arms and probably your face. So that was interesting. I was out there wandering around all by my little self and thinking it was totally fine because who would let a random woman wander around on their farm by herself if it wasn't safe? I mean, they did not expect that I would wander off. And once they found out, they gave me a radio and explained a bit more about the dangers I could encounter. But I still wandered out around the whole place alone because that is what I do. And I'm constantly in trouble for it, even at my own home. But thank you for being with me today. I will link to resources in the show notes. And if you get a chance, do go watch the original Destination Truth show. And I will link to my great big book of stories from Western Africa. It has a lot of cool information. So if spirits and mythology are your thing, check that out. I will be using an Amazon affiliate link for some of the books that I provide links to, so be aware of that. If you want to purchase any of my books, you can do that directly from my Shopify store at leedawnabooks.com. I have a couple of free books out and some sales happening right now. According to Grok, my website is great. It's user-friendly and easy to navigate. I have been working on it really hard and I am 0% tech savvy, so I have to ask questions and tell Grok to talk real slow and explain things to me in nauseating detail. And he does. And then he tells me I am doing a wonderful job and I appreciate the fluff. I really do. You guys are great. I thank you for sticking with me and continuing to support the show and my work. I'm having a really great year, some books in some top categories, and you guys are just continuing to amaze me. I appreciate that you like my writing. I am working on a thriller right now that will be out in October, and I think you guys are really going to like it. It's going to be one like Sierra. So if you read Sierra and you really loved the twist at the end, this one is going to be another one that has a big twist at the end. So I'm excited about that one. And Descend as well. You guys like the twist at the end. That one is a trilogy. So do be aware it does end on a bit of a cliffhanger. You do find out the whodunit at the end of book one, but it does have 2 more books that go with that one. And Descend is free right now. So you guys can grab that from me, or it should be free at every retailer at this point. So check those out if thrillers are your thing. I have to go. The sun is coming up and we are in a massive drought here in North Carolina. So I cannot keep any of my plants alive where I have to water a lot. And it's spring and this is the time the plants really need all this water. So it's like a 2.5-hour process for me to get from one side of the acreage to the other. We do have some water containment. They are not dry yet. And we are on well water, which is good because in the cities, they are putting out restrictions on water usage and stuff like that. So pray that North Carolina gets some rain soon, guys. Maybe by the time you're watching this, we will have had rain. And I pep talk my plants when I'm out watering them and telling them that it's going to be okay. They just have to get through it. Until I see you next time, check out my website and tell me if Grok is a liar or not. And check your toes in the morning. And I will see you later. Bye.
Sunshine.